All units, welfare check requested. 36 Alderney Street, Pimlico. Resident hasn't been seen in 7 days. Officers report strong decomposition odor from flat.
Jesus Christ. Control. We need CID here. Now, what the hell? Is that a sports bag? Control. You need to notify MI6. We've got a body.
August 23, 2010. London's Pimlico district. A government-owned apartment on Alderney Street sits quiet, its windows reflecting the late summer sun. Inside, the central heating runs at maximum power despite the warmth outside. The air is thick, stifling, accelerating what's been happening in the bathroom for 7 days. When police finally force entry, they discover something that will baffle investigators for over a decade. In the bathtub of the main bedroom's ensuite bathroom sits a red North Face sports bag. Padlocked. From the outside. Inside, curled in the fetal position, is the naked, decomposing body of 31-year-old Gareth Williams, a mathematical genius, a GCHQ codebreaker, an MI6 operative who had just returned from a top-secret mission in Las Vegas. The key to the padlock? Inside the bag with him. His fingerprints? Nowhere on the lock, the zipper, or even the rim of his own bathtub. Evidence of forced entry? None. Signs of a struggle? None. Explanation for how a man could climb into a bag, zip it shut from the inside, and padlock himself from the outside, a feat even professional escape artists cannot replicate? None. Sound, lock clicking, bag zipper closing. What makes this case so baffling isn't just the physical impossibility of the crime scene. It's the shadows that surround it. The MI6 headquarters that failed to report their agent missing for 7 days. The secret meeting between the head of British intelligence and Scotland Yard's top brass hours after the body was discovered. The 9 memory sticks found in Williams's office that were never turned over to investigators. The mysterious couple who visited his flat days before his death. The Russian money laundering operation he was helping the NSA trace. The defected KGB agent who claims Williams threatened to expose a mole inside GCHQ, and paid with his life. 14 years later, after multiple inquests, police reinvestigations, and forensic reviews using cutting-edge technology, one question remains: did Gareth Williams die in a tragic accident, a sexual misadventure, or was he assassinated by forces that operate in the shadows, forces powerful enough to make murder look impossible? This is Cold Case Dossier: The Spy in the Bag, the impossible death of Gareth Williams unsolved. Unforgotten. And locked away in silence. To understand the mystery of Gareth Williams's death, you must first understand the extraordinary life that preceded it. This wasn't just another intelligence officer. This was a mind so exceptional that it attracted the attention of Britain's most secretive agencies before he was even old enough to vote. September 26, 1978. Valley, Anglesey, a small village on the northwestern coast of Wales where the Irish Sea crashes against ancient cliffs and the wind carries the salt of centuries. Here, in a modest home overlooking fields that stretch toward Holyhead Mountain, Ian and Ellen Williams welcomed their son Gareth Wynne Williams into a world that would prove too small to contain him. Welsh was Gareth's first language. The melodic, ancient tongue of his ancestors filled the house on quiet evenings, mixing with the sound of rain on slate roofs and his mother's voice reading bedtime stories. English came second, learned at Ysgol Jinrad Morswyn Primary School, where teachers quickly realized they had something rare in their classroom: a child whose mind worked at a speed that left adults struggling to keep up. By age 10, Gareth had completed his GCSE in mathematics. 10 years old. While his classmates were learning multiplication tables, Gareth Williams was solving equations that would challenge university students. His teachers at Ysgol Uwchradd Bod Dern, his secondary school, watched in quiet amazement as this shy, modest boy demolished academic barriers like they were made of paper. There was nothing arrogant about Gareth's brilliance. His brother-in-law, Chris Sub, would later describe him as providing subtle and thoughtful conversation, never showing off, never making others feel inferior. He was unbelievably gifted but remained so modest and humble, Sub said at Gareth's funeral, his voice breaking. He was a source of joy to his family. The rural landscape of Anglesey shaped him. Gareth was a passionate cyclist, his lean frame cutting through Welsh mountain roads on long rides where the only sounds were wind, breath, and the whisper of bicycle tires on asphalt. He was a walker too, someone who found peace in the solitude of hillsides where mobile signals disappeared and the modern world felt distant. At 15, the age when most teenagers are worried about acne and their first kiss, Gareth Williams enrolled at Bangor University to study mathematics part-time while still attending secondary school. The university is located just across the Menai Strait from Anglesey, close enough that Gareth could remain tethered to the landscape that grounded him, even as his mind soared into abstract realms of number theory and cryptography. By 17, he had earned a first-class degree in mathematics. By his early 20s, he held a PhD in computer science from the University of Manchester, one of Britain's leading research institutions. But even with these credentials, Gareth Williams remained that same modest boy from Valley who preferred the countryside to cities, Welsh hymns to popular music, and the company of family to the noise of crowds. In 2001, at age 23, Gareth joined the Government Communications Headquarters, GCHQ, Britain's signals intelligence agency based in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire. If you're not familiar with GCHQ, think of it as Britain's equivalent to America's National Security Agency. These are the people who intercept communications, break codes, and conduct cyber operations that never make the news because if they did, they wouldn't work anymore. GCHQ looks for specific kinds of minds. Mathematical brilliance isn't enough, you need linguistic ability, creative problem solving, and the kind of personality that can handle the isolation of knowing secrets you can never share. Gareth Williams was perfect for them. He rented a modest room in Prestbury, a quiet suburb of Cheltenham, and spent nearly a decade becoming one of Britain's most skilled cryptographers. His work was invisible but vital. He helped break coded Taliban communications during the War on Terror. He worked on intercepting emails that led to the conviction of would-be bombers plotting to destroy transcontinental flights. He designed practical applications for emerging technologies, which is intelligence, speak for creating tools that allow spies to do their jobs without being detected. Colleagues described Gareth as intensely private but unfailingly kind. He won 2 awards for code-breaking, rare recognition in an agency where success is usually measured in silence. His boss at GCHQ would later call him a world-class intelligence officer, praise that carries weight in an organization that employs some of the sharpest minds in Britain. But Gareth wanted something more. Or perhaps something different. In 2007, he applied to transfer to the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, Britain's foreign intelligence agency. While GCHQ focuses on signals and communications, MI6 deals with human intelligence, spies, recruiters, field operatives working in foreign countries under diplomatic cover or deep cover identities. The first time Gareth applied, he failed the aptitude tests. This must have stung for someone who had never failed an academic test in his life. But failure didn't define Gareth Williams. He tried again in 2008. This time, he passed. In spring 2009, Gareth Williams left his quiet life in Cheltenham and moved to London. MI6 provided him with a top-floor flat at 36 Alderney Street in Pimlico, a government-owned building used as a safe house for intelligence officers. The flat was unremarkable from the outside, the kind of place you'd walk past without a second glance. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, ensuite bathroom in the main bedroom. Functional, anonymous, secure. London was a shock to Gareth's system. He had spent his life in rural Wales and provincial Cheltenham. Now he was thrust into the rat race, flash car competitions and post-work drinking culture that defined MI6's social environment. Where GCHQ staff were largely academics and technologists, MI6 officers were often from elite backgrounds, Oxford, Cambridge, old money, connections that opened doors Gareth had never needed opened because his mind was the only credential he required. He underwent 5 training courses to prepare for active operational work. The details of these courses remain classified, but they likely included surveillance detection, agent recruitment techniques, operational security protocols, and how to maintain cover identities in hostile environments. Gareth Williams, the shy mathematician from Anglesey, was being turned into a spy. But he hated it. Within months, Gareth was asking to return to GCHQ. He missed the countryside. He missed cycling through hills where the only eyes watching were sheep and ravens. He missed working in an environment where brilliance mattered more than social connections. He was due to return to Cheltenham in September 2010. He would never make that return. In the spring and early summer of 2010, Gareth Williams was assigned to work with the United States National Security Agency and FBI on what sources have described as very sensitive operations targeting Russian organized crime and money laundering. The specifics remain classified, but what we know suggests Gareth was using his cryptography expertise to trace how dirty money from Moscow-based mafia cells was being laundered through international banking systems. This was dangerous work. Russian organized crime in the 2010s wasn't just about petty theft or smuggling. It was, and remains, a sophisticated network with ties to the Kremlin, oligarchs, and intelligence services. Disrupting their financial networks meant making powerful enemies. In late July 2010, Gareth traveled to Las Vegas for the annual Black Hat briefings and DEF CON conferences, the world's premier gatherings for cybersecurity professionals and hackers. Black Hat runs from late July, attracting corporate security officers, government agents, and researchers presenting the latest vulnerabilities in software and hardware. DEF CON immediately follows, drawing a more underground crowd: hackers, phone phreakers, lock pickers, people who see security as a challenge to overcome rather than a wall to build. According to witnesses at the inquest, Gareth attended in his official capacity, accompanied by other British intelligence officers. But he also extended his stay in Las Vegas for approximately 1 week of vacation, staying at Caesars Palace and Trump Las Vegas, spending around $2,000 per day, unusual for someone known to be frugal and modest in his lifestyle. What was he doing during that extra week? Who did he meet? The FBI investigated this, sending officers to Las Vegas to gather information. Redacted documents mention additional records from Las Vegas and a UK citizen residing in San Diego, California with additional information. But these leads apparently went nowhere, or if they went somewhere, that somewhere remains classified. Gareth returned to London on August 11, 2010. 5 days later, he would be dead. The last confirmed sighting of Gareth Williams alive is captured on CCTV footage from August 15, 2010. The cameras show him in Knightsbridge, London's luxury shopping district, browsing at Harrods, one of the world's most famous department stores. He's alone, moving through displays with the slightly awkward posture of someone uncomfortable in expensive surroundings. Gareth had recently developed an unexpected interest: fashion. He had enrolled in courses at Central St. Martin's, a prestigious art and design college in Soho, studying fashion design. When police eventually searched his flat, they would find approximately £15,000 worth of unworn designer women's clothing, shoes, and wigs, brands like Stella McCartney and Christian Louboutin, still in their boxes, tags still attached. This detail would be seized upon by tabloid media and used to construct narratives about Gareth's private life, narratives his family would vehemently deny and the coroner would later condemn as media manipulation. But in August 2010, as Gareth Williams walked through Harrods alone, none of that mattered yet. The CCTV timestamp reads 7:42 p.m. on August 15. Within hours, Gareth Williams would be dead, locked inside a bag in his bathtub, beginning a decomposition that would erase crucial forensic evidence and leave investigators with more questions than answers for over a decade. August 16, 2010. Monday morning. MI6 headquarters at Vauxhall Cross, the distinctive green and cream building on the south bank of the River Thames that houses Britain's Foreign Intelligence Service, begins another week of operations. Analysts arrive, security passes are scanned, classified computers boot up behind walls designed to prevent electronic eavesdropping. Gareth Williams's desk remains empty. This, in itself, shouldn't be remarkable. Gareth had been on annual leave, vacation time earned after months of intensive work on Russian money laundering operations. But August 16 was meant to be his first day back. The leave was over. Operational work was resuming. And Gareth Williams didn't show up. By midday, his absence should have triggered protocols. MI6 isn't a regular office where missing a day of work might be overlooked. These are intelligence officers handling classified material, working on sensitive operations where a single compromised agent can unravel months or years of work. When an officer goes dark without explanation, alarms should ring. They didn't. August 17, Tuesday. Gareth's desk remains empty. Still no call, no email, no explanation. His mobile phone, his work phone, the one that connects to secure networks, goes unanswered. According to testimony given later at the inquest, his line manager at GCHQ was aware of the absence but took no action. Dr. Fiona Wilcox, the coroner who would later examine the evidence, said this testimony begins to stretch bounds of credibility. How does a world-class intelligence officer simply vanish, and nobody notices? Or worse, nobody acts? August 18, Wednesday. 3 days missing. In the corporate world, you might get a call from HR. In the intelligence world, where officers deal with hostile foreign powers and organized crime networks capable of extraordinary violence, 3 days of silence should trigger welfare checks at minimum. Nothing happened. August 19, Thursday. August 20, Friday. August 21, Saturday. August 22, Sunday. 7 days. 168 hours. 10,080 minutes. And nobody from MI6 or GCHQ knocked on Gareth Williams's door. Think about that for a moment. Gareth Williams was working on operations targeting Russian mafia money laundering. He had just returned from a trip to Las Vegas where he had been investigating cybercrime networks. He had recently attended the world's largest hacker conference where thousands of people, including those with connections to hostile intelligence services, had been present. And when he disappeared, his employers did nothing. Robin Williams, the Williams family's solicitor, would later say with barely controlled anger, his employers failed to make even the most basic inquiries about his whereabouts and welfare. It took Gareth's sister, Carrie, to finally force action. On August 23, a full 7 days after Gareth should have returned to work, Carrie contacted authorities to report her brother missing. She hadn't been able to reach him. He hadn't responded to messages. This wasn't like Gareth. The modest, thoughtful man who provided subtle and thoughtful conversation wouldn't simply vanish without telling his family. Only then, only after a civilian family member raised the alarm, did anyone go to 36 Alderney Street. Monday afternoon, August 23, 2010. 2 police officers arrive at the Pimlico safe house for what's officially logged as a welfare check. They have a spare key, standard procedure for government-owned properties. The summer sun is still warm, the street quiet, the building's facade unremarkable. They unlock the door at approximately 4:48 p.m. The smell hits them immediately. Anyone who has encountered decomposition knows that smell. It's not something you forget. It bypasses rational thought and triggers something primal, the recognition that death is present, that human flesh is reverting to its component elements. The flat is immaculate. Almost unnaturally so. Everything is in its place. The curtains are drawn, creating dim shadows even in the late afternoon light. The kitchen is clean, dishes put away, surfaces wiped. The living room shows no signs of struggle or disturbance. But that smell. The officers move through the flat, following the scent to the main bedroom. The door is open. The bedroom itself is tidy. And there, through the doorway to the ensuite bathroom, they see it. A red North Face sports bag, sitting in the bathtub. A padlock hangs from the zipper handles, clicked shut. The bag isn't moving. It isn't making sound. But the smell is overwhelming now, concentrated, unavoidable. One officer approaches. The other radios for assistance, his voice tight with the kind of control that comes from years of training fighting against instinctual revulsion. The bag is approximately 32 inches by 19 inches, large, but not enormous. A standard holdall that hundreds of thousands of people own for gym equipment or weekend trips. The zipper is fully closed. The padlock securing it is a simple combination lock, the kind you might use on a school locker. The officers don't open it immediately. This is now a potential crime scene. Instead, they secure the area, call for CID, Criminal Investigation Department, and wait for senior officers to arrive. When the bag is finally opened, what investigators find inside will change this from a welfare check to one of the most baffling cases in British intelligence history. Gareth Williams is inside the bag. Naked. Curled in the fetal position, his knees drawn up to his chest, his arms tucked against his body. The decomposition is advanced. 7 days in a centrally heated flat have accelerated the process significantly. His skin has begun to liquefy, bodily fluids have pooled at the bottom of the bag, and the smell is so intense that even experienced officers have to step outside to breathe. The key to the padlock is found underneath Gareth's body, tucked into the bottom of the bag. Let that detail sink in for a moment. The padlock is on the outside of the bag, securing the zipper pulls together. The key is on the inside, underneath a dead man. Forensic specialists arrive. The flat is declared a crime scene. Photography, evidence collection, fingerprint analysis, all the machinery of modern investigation begins its work. And with each piece of evidence collected, the case becomes stranger. There are no fingerprints on the padlock. None. Not Gareth's, not anyone's. The padlock, which was allegedly locked from the outside, shows no traces of the person who supposedly locked it. There are no fingerprints on the zipper handles. The bag was zipped shut, but whoever did it left no trace. There are no fingerprints on the rim of the bathtub. Think about that. This is Gareth's own bathroom, in his own flat, where he had been living for over a year. He would have used this bathtub hundreds of times. Yet there are no fingerprints on the rim, not from climbing in, not from getting out, not from cleaning it. There are no footprints on the bathroom floor. No palm prints on the tiles. The bathroom has been wiped clean with a thoroughness that speaks to either obsessive tidiness or deliberate evidence removal. The shower curtain has been drawn across the bathtub, concealing the bag from casual view. The bathroom lights are switched off. It's as if someone wanted to delay discovery as long as possible. DNA analysis reveals trace amounts of genetic material that doesn't match Gareth. The samples are too degraded to produce full profiles, but investigators identify DNA from at least 2 unidentified individuals on the zipper toggle and the padlock. Who these people are remains unknown to this day. The flat itself yields more mysteries. The central heating is turned up to maximum, in the middle of August, during a London summer. Why? The elevated temperature accelerated decomposition, making it impossible for pathologists to determine precise cause of death. Was this intentional? Gareth's mobile phone is found on a table, but it has been reset to factory settings, all data wiped, all contacts erased, all messages deleted. The SIM cards from his multiple phones are laid out in a row on the table, removed from the devices. Who did this? When? And why? 9 memory sticks are discovered in Gareth's MI6 office, portable storage devices potentially containing classified information about his work on Russian money laundering, his trips to Las Vegas, his interactions with the NSA. Standard protocol would require these to be immediately handed over to investigating officers. They weren't. The Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command, SO-15, fails to inform the senior investigating officer about the existence of these memory sticks until after the inquest begins. By then, whatever information they contained has been reviewed, analyzed, and likely redacted by intelligence services who operate under different rules than civilian police. Perhaps most disturbing is what happens within hours of the body being discovered. Sir John Sars, the head of MI6, one of the most powerful intelligence figures in Britain, meets privately with Sir Paul Stevenson, Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Britain's most senior police officer. The Telegraph would later report that Sars sought assurances that the investigation would not stray beyond its remit during the investigation into the discovery of Mr. Williams's body. In other words, MI6 was setting boundaries on what could be investigated before the investigation had even really begun. The official cause of death, when it finally comes from pathologist Ian Calder, is as frustrating as everything else in this case. Calder determines that Williams would have been overcome by hypercapnia, elevated carbon dioxide levels, within 2 to 3 minutes of being sealed in the bag. Death by asphyxiation would have followed within 30 minutes. But because of the advanced decomposition accelerated by the central heating, Calder cannot determine whether Williams was conscious when he entered the bag, whether he was drugged, whether he had been poisoned, or whether someone else's hand sealed that zipper and clicked that padlock shut. What Calder can determine is that there are no significant injuries to the body. No broken bones, no signs of blunt force trauma, no defensive wounds on the hands or arms. The only notable marks are light bruising on Williams's elbows, consistent with the position he was found in, but not indicative of a struggle. Toxicology reports come back negative for common recreational drugs, alcohol, or standard poisons. But as any forensic expert will tell you, there are substances that don't show up in standard toxicology panels, substances that metabolize quickly, that mimic natural causes, that leave no trace unless you know exactly what to look for. As news of the discovery leaks to the media, something interesting begins to happen. Unnamed sources start briefing journalists with salacious details about Gareth Williams's private life. Claims that he visited bondage websites. Suggestions that he was interested in confined spaces, claustrophilia. Mentions of the women's clothing and wigs found in his flat. The narrative being constructed is clear: this was a sex game gone wrong, a lonely man with unusual interests who made a fatal mistake while indulging private fantasies. Gareth's family is horrified and furious. His childhood sweetheart, Sion Lloyd-Jones, speaks out publicly, defending Gareth's character. His sister Carrie, brother-in-law Chris, parents Ian and Ellen, all deny the insinuations. Gareth wanted a girlfriend, they say. He wanted a wife and family someday. He had interests in fashion and design, yes, but to twist these into evidence of sexual deviance feels like a deliberate attempt to discredit him and distract from more uncomfortable questions. Dr. Fiona Wilcox, the Westminster coroner, will later condemn these leaks as media manipulation, a phrase that carries weight in British legal proceedings, where coroners are usually restrained in their language. Because here's what the salacious tabloid stories ignore: even if Gareth Williams had been exploring bondage or confined spaces, even if the women's clothing represented some private interest or fantasy, none of that explains the physical evidence. Expert after expert attempted to replicate what Gareth supposedly did. A yoga instructor, someone with exceptional flexibility and body control, tried over 300 times to climb into an identical bag, zip it shut from the inside, and lock the padlock through the zipper handles. She failed every single time. A professional escape artist was brought in. Even he couldn't do it. The Metropolitan Police conducted their own tests. Officers tried repeatedly to seal themselves in the bag the way Williams was supposedly sealed. They couldn't do it. Dr. Wilcox herself said it plainly: even Houdini couldn't have done this. So if Gareth Williams didn't lock himself in that bag, if the physical evidence shows it's impossible, if experts confirm it can't be done, then someone else did it. And that someone left virtually no evidence behind. The investigation into Gareth Williams's death begins with the kind of intensity reserved for cases that carry political and intelligence implications. This isn't just a mysterious death. It's the death of an MI6 officer working on sensitive operations targeting Russian organized crime, found under circumstances that suggest either spectacular incompetence or sophisticated murder. Detective Chief Inspector Neil John leads the Metropolitan Police investigation. He's a veteran of complex cases, but even he will admit later that the Williams case presents unique challenges. The crime scene, if it is a crime scene, has been contaminated by 7 days of decomposition and elevated temperatures. The victims' employers are intelligence agencies bound by Official Secrets Acts and reluctant to reveal operational details. And the physical evidence seems to defy logical explanation. The first major question investigators must answer: was there forced entry into the flat? The answer: no. The locks on 36 Alderney Street show no signs of tampering. The door frame isn't damaged. The windows are secure, none broken or jimmied. Whoever entered that flat either had a key or was let in by Gareth himself. This narrows the suspect pool considerably, but it also raises uncomfortable questions about who might have access to keys for MI6 safe houses. The second question: was there a struggle? Again, no. The flat is immaculate. Furniture is in place. Nothing is overturned or broken. The only disorder is the decomposing body in the bathroom, and even there, the scene has an eerie orderliness to it. The bag placed neatly in the bathtub, the shower curtain drawn, the lights off, the heating turned up. It looks staged, carefully arranged, thought through. The third question: who visited Gareth Williams in the days before his death? This is where things get interesting, and frustratingly vague. Neighbors report seeing an unidentified couple at the building in the days before Gareth's body was discovered. They were described as Mediterranean-looking, a description vague enough to mean almost anything. The couple allegedly knocked on multiple doors before locating Gareth's flat, suggesting they knew the building but not the specific apartment number. Who were they? What did they want? Were they connected to intelligence services? To Russian organized crime? To Gareth's personal life? We don't know. The couple was never identified, never located, never interviewed. They remain ghosts in the narrative, possibly crucial witnesses, possibly innocent visitors, possibly something far more sinister. Investigators also discover that hours before Gareth's estimated time of death, CCTV captured him at Harrods in Knightsbridge. The footage shows him shopping alone, browsing through displays, eventually purchasing items that were later found in his flat. He appears calm, unhurried, giving no indication of distress or fear. This raises the question: was Gareth lured to his death by someone he knew? Or did something happen after he returned home that night? The forensic timeline, such as it can be established, suggests death occurred in the early hours of August 16, 2010. But the 7-day delay in discovery and the accelerated decomposition make it impossible to pinpoint the exact time. Pathologist Ian Calder can only say Williams had been dead for approximately 1 week when found. Investigators review Gareth's computer and phone records, looking for clues about his state of mind, his relationships, his recent activities. What they find becomes fuel for the "sex game gone wrong" narrative that tabloids eagerly embrace. Gareth's laptop shows he had visited 4 websites related to bondage and confined spaces. One site is called Hogtie. Another is The Art of Constriction. But context matters here. These sites are not pornographic. They feature artistic photography of restraint and confinement, often with women as subjects. And here's the crucial detail investigators often overlook: the browsing history shows Gareth visited these sites only a few times, and some visits occurred shortly after he had been viewing escape artist tutorials and lockpicking guides. Could Gareth have been researching how to escape from restraints as part of his intelligence training? MI6 officers undergo training in surveillance detection, which often includes learning how to escape from various types of restraints in case of capture. Was Gareth's interest professional rather than sexual? His family and friends insist this is the case. Sion Lloyd-Jones, his childhood sweetheart, tells investigators that Gareth had no interest in bondage or unusual sexual practices. She describes a man who wanted conventional relationships, who was looking for a girlfriend and hoping to start a family someday. The idea that Gareth was engaging in solo sexual experimentation doesn't match the person she knew. But the discovery of approximately £15,000 worth of unworn women's designer clothing complicates this defense. The clothes are high-end, Stella McCartney dresses, Christian Louboutin shoes, expensive wigs still in their packaging. Tags are still attached. None appear to have been worn. The tabloid interpretation: Gareth was a crossdresser or transvestite engaging in secret behavior he couldn't reveal to family or colleagues. The alternative interpretation presented by Gareth's family: he was studying fashion design at Central St. Martin's and had purchased these items as references for his coursework. Fashion students often buy expensive pieces to study construction techniques, materials, design elements. The fact that items are unworn and still tagged actually supports this explanation. These were study materials, not garments purchased for personal wear. Dr. Fiona Wilcox, the coroner, explicitly states that Gareth Williams was not a transvestite and that the media's focus on his sexuality represents manipulation rather than legitimate investigation. But the damage is done. The narrative has been planted: weird loner with unusual sexual interests dies in sex game gone wrong. It's a narrative that conveniently distracts from more uncomfortable questions about intelligence operations, Russian organized crime, and whether Britain's security services might have blood on their hands. As the investigation progresses, more troubling details emerge about MI6's handling of Gareth's disappearance. When Gareth failed to return to work on August 16, his absence was noted by colleagues. According to testimony at the inquest, his line manager at GCHQ was informed. But instead of triggering welfare check protocols, standard procedure when an intelligence officer goes dark, nothing happened. Why? One possibility: MI6 assumed Gareth had extended his leave without properly notifying them. He had recently been on vacation in Las Vegas and might have decided to take additional time off. But this explanation falls apart under scrutiny. Gareth Williams was described by everyone who knew him as conscientious, organized, professional. He wasn't the type to skip work without notification, especially given his desire to return to GCHQ and leave London behind. Another possibility: MI6 knew Gareth was in danger or compromised and deliberately delayed discovery to allow time for evidence to be destroyed or removed from the scene. This sounds like conspiracy theory territory until you consider the meeting between Sir John Sars and Sir Paul Stephenson hours after the body was discovered. What was discussed in that meeting? What assurances did the head of MI6 seek? And why did MI6 Counter-Terrorism Command fail to disclose the existence of 9 memory sticks in Gareth's office until after the inquest had begun? Investigators interview Gareth's colleagues, trying to piece together his final days and weeks. What they hear is consistent: Gareth was professional, competent, but increasingly unhappy with MI6 culture. He disliked the rat race and flash car competitions that seemed to define social status among officers. He missed the countryside. He had formally requested transfer back to GCHQ and was due to return in September, just weeks away when he died. One colleague mentions that Gareth seemed distracted in his final weeks, but couldn't specify what was troubling him. Another remembers Gareth mentioning he was looking forward to getting back to Cheltenham. There's no indication he was suicidal, no signs of depression beyond the general dissatisfaction with London life that many people experience. Investigators also look into Gareth's personal relationships. His family describes him as a private person but not isolated. He maintained close ties with his parents and sister in Wales, calling regularly and visiting when work permitted. He had friends from university who remembered him fondly. His childhood sweetheart remained in his life as a trusted confidant. But romantic relationships? Those are harder to find. Gareth had dated in the past but nothing serious in recent years. Some colleagues wondered if he might be gay. The expensive women's clothing seemed to suggest something about his sexuality or gender identity. But his family insists Gareth was heterosexual, simply shy and focused on his career rather than dating. The investigation reaches out to intelligence counterparts in the United States. Gareth had been working closely with the NSA and FBI on operations targeting Russian money laundering. Had he made enemies? Had he uncovered something that made him a target? The FBI conducts interviews in Las Vegas, tracing Gareth's movements during his extended stay after the Black Hat and DEF CON conferences. They identify the hotels where he stayed, review security footage, interview staff. But if they find anything significant, it doesn't make it into public reports. What we do know is that Gareth spent approximately $2,000 per day during his extra week in Las Vegas, unusual for someone known to be frugal. What was he doing? Gambling? Meeting contacts? Conducting surveillance? The answers remain classified or simply unknown. By October 2010, 2 months after the body was discovered, the Metropolitan Police have conducted over 200 interviews, reviewed hundreds of hours of CCTV footage, and analyzed every piece of physical evidence from the flat. And they have no clear answers. The case is stuck in an impossible paradox. The physical evidence suggests murder, but there's no clear motive, no identified suspect, no obvious means of entry, and no explanation for how a killer could have left such a clean crime scene. Detective Chief Inspector Jackie Seebeyer, who takes over the investigation from DC and Neil John, faces mounting pressure to provide answers. The media is demanding them. Gareth's family is demanding them. And MI6's silence on operational details makes it impossible to fully investigate potential connections to his intelligence work. In November 2010, the police make a statement that will haunt the investigation for years. They believe Gareth Williams's death was probably an accident. The reaction is immediate and fierce. Gareth's family is outraged. How can you call it an accident when experts have proven it's impossible for someone to lock themselves in that bag? When there are unidentified DNA samples on the lock? When there's no explanation for the wiped phone, the elevated heating, the missing fingerprints? The statement feels less like a conclusion based on evidence and more like a conclusion designed to close an uncomfortable case. But it doesn't close. Instead, it festers, generating conspiracy theories and public skepticism about whether British authorities can be trusted to investigate the death of one of their own intelligence officers. The case drags on. In 2011, an inquest is scheduled, then postponed. In 2012, it's finally held, nearly 2 years after Gareth's death, and the testimony presented will challenge the accident narrative and open new questions about what really happened in that flat on Alderney Street. May 2012. Westminster Coroner's Court. Nearly 2 years after Gareth Williams's body was discovered, an inquest opens to examine the circumstances of his death and determine, if possible, what happened in that Pimlico flat. Presiding is Dr. Fiona Wilcox, the Westminster coroner, a figure who will prove to be far more skeptical of official narratives than the authorities might have hoped. Over the course of several weeks, she will hear testimony from forensic experts, police investigators, intelligence officers, and Gareth's family members. And she will reach a conclusion that directly contradicts the Metropolitan Police's accident theory. The inquest begins with the physical evidence. Forensic experts walk the court through what was found in the bathroom that August day in 2010. The bag, a red North Face holdall, 32 inches by 19 inches, purchased from a shop in Chelsea for approximately £40. Common, unremarkable, the kind of bag owned by millions of people. The padlock, a simple combination lock, the type you might use on a school locker or gym bag. Set to a 3-digit code that was never disclosed publicly. The lock was closed, securing the 2 zipper handles together. The key, yes, the padlock had a key override feature, most combination locks do, in case you forget the combination. The key was found inside the bag, underneath Gareth's body, pressed into the liquid decomposition at the bottom. Peter Falding takes the stand. He's a specialist in confined spaces rescue, someone who has spent decades extracting people from caves, collapsed buildings, and industrial accidents. He's also an expert in body positioning and the physical limitations of human movement in restricted spaces. The court watches as Falding presents video evidence of his attempts to replicate what Gareth supposedly did. Using an identical bag, Falding, who is fit, flexible, and experienced, tries over 300 times to climb inside, zip it shut from within, and somehow secure a padlock through the external zipper handles. He fails every single time. It's impossible, Falding testifies. Even if you could zip the bag most of the way closed from inside, which is extremely difficult, you cannot secure a padlock through external handles once you're sealed inside. Your arms cannot reach. The angle is wrong. The space is too confined. The prosecution presents a yoga instructor who attempted the same feat also failed. A professional contortionist tried. Failed. Metropolitan police officers tried during their investigation. Failed. Dr. Wilcox asks the question everyone in the courtroom is thinking: if experts with training and motivation cannot replicate this, how do we believe Gareth Williams, with no known escape artist training, did it by accident? The answer: we don't. But then the court hears from forensic anthropologist Dr. Nat Carey, who has been hired by the police to challenge Peter Falding's testimony. Carey argues that it is theoretically possible for someone to lock themselves in the bag using a technique involving folding the bag's opening and manipulating the zipper pulls in a specific way. Carey demonstrates his theory. It requires extraordinary flexibility, precise movements, and multiple attempts. Even under ideal conditions, it's barely possible, and that's with practice, in a well-lit room, without panic or time pressure. Dr. Wilcox is not convinced. She notes that Carrie's demonstration required multiple attempts and still looked awkward and unnatural. The idea that Gareth, in a scenario involving sexual experimentation or claustrophilia, would have had the presence of mind and physical ability to execute such a complex technique while presumably aroused or in a confined psychological state seems implausible at best. Then comes testimony about the DNA evidence. Dr. Andrew Kirkham, from the Forensic Science Service, explains that DNA samples were recovered from the padlock and zipper toggle. These samples do not match Gareth Williams. They are too degraded to produce full genetic profiles, but they confirm the presence of at least 2 other individuals. The police explain this away by suggesting contamination during manufacturing or retail handling. The bag and lock were purchased from shops where multiple people might have touched them. The DNA could be from factory workers, retail employees, or other customers who handled the items before purchase. But here's the problem with that explanation: Gareth's own DNA is barely present on these items. If the unidentified DNA is from innocent handling, why is Gareth's DNA, from the person who supposedly bought, transported, and used these items, so minimal? Why would someone else's DNA be more prominent than the victim's on items found in his bathroom, in his flat, after his death? The inquest also examines Gareth's state of mind. Was he depressed? Suicidal? Engaging in risky behavior that might explain a fatal accident? His family testifies emphatically, no. Carrie, Gareth's sister, describes her brother as someone looking forward to returning to Cheltenham, to getting back to the countryside he loved. He had plans. He had projects he wanted to work on. He was studying fashion design because it interested him, not because he was in crisis. Sion Lloyd-Jones, his childhood sweetheart, tells the court that Gareth wanted a girlfriend and hoped to have a family someday. He wasn't isolated or depressed. He was simply private, an introvert who valued deep relationships over broad social circles. Ian and Ellen Williams, Gareth's parents, sit in the courtroom and listen as their son's life is dissected, his privacy invaded, his character questioned. They hear suggestions that Gareth had unusual sexual interests, that he cross-dressed, that he died during a sex game gone wrong. And they reject these suggestions with the kind of quiet dignity that characterized their son. Dr. Wilcox notes in her ruling that the Williams family's testimony is credible and consistent. There is no evidence Gareth was engaging in the kind of risky sexual behavior that the accident theory requires. The expensive women's clothing can be explained by his fashion studies. The bondage websites can be explained by professional interest in escape techniques. None of it proves sexual motive for getting into that bag. The court also hears troubling testimony about MI6's handling of the case. Why did it take 7 days for anyone to check on Gareth when he failed to return to work? The answer from MI6 representatives is unsatisfying. They claim there was confusion about whether Gareth was still on leave. His line manager thought someone else was handling it. Communication broke down. Protocols weren't followed. Dr. Wilcox is blunt in her assessment: the evidence of the failure to react to the defendant's absence is a cause for concern. She goes further, suggesting that the delay in discovering Gareth's body allowed crucial forensic evidence to be destroyed by decomposition. If welfare checks had been conducted on August 16 or 17, when they should have been, pathologists might have been able to determine cause of death with certainty, toxicology might have revealed drugs or poisons, and the investigation wouldn't be hampered by 7 days of accelerated decay. The inquest also examines the 9 memory sticks found in Gareth's MI6 office. Why weren't these immediately disclosed to the senior investigating officer? What information did they contain? Could they reveal motive for murder? The answers are heavily redacted and classified. National security concerns prevent full disclosure. The court is told the memory sticks contained routine work materials and nothing relevant to Gareth's death. But how can investigators be certain if they can't examine the contents? How can the family be satisfied that all leads were pursued if key evidence remains classified? They can't. On May 2, 2012, Dr. Fiona Wilcox delivers her conclusion, the official determination that will stand as the inquest's finding. I am satisfied that on the balance of probabilities that Gareth was killed unlawfully. Unlawfully killed. Not accidental death. Not misadventure. Not suicide. Murder. Dr. Wilcox goes further. The cause of death was unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. I am therefore satisfied that on the balance of probabilities that Gareth was killed unlawfully. She addresses the sex game gone wrong theory directly, despite the best endeavors of the police, SOCO, forensic scientists, pathologists, and the many other specialists. The circumstance of Gareth's death are still unknown. But it is most unlikely that this was an accident. She condemns the media coverage. I am satisfied that the so-called bondage explanations are unfounded and the more sensational reporting of it entirely misleading. And she criticizes MI6's handling of the case. It is a legitimate cause for concern that the GCHQ and SIS did not raise the alarm until a week after Gareth's body was discovered. The Williams family releases a statement through their solicitor. We consider that on the basis of the facts at present, the coroner was absolutely right in her verdict. We are satisfied that she has been thorough in her approach and have every confidence in her conclusion that Gareth was unlawfully killed. The Metropolitan Police, however, refused to accept the coroner's ruling. In an almost unprecedented move, they announced they will continue to treat the death as unexplained and not upgrade it to a murder investigation. This creates a bizarre legal situation. A coroner has ruled unlawful killing, but the police won't investigate it as murder. It's as if Gareth Williams exists in a limbo, officially murdered according to the inquest, but not murdered according to the investigators responsible for catching his killer. Why would the police reject a coroner's finding? Possible explanations range from mundane to sinister. Mundane, they genuinely believe they're forensic experts over the coroners and think the evidence supports accident over murder. Sinister, they are under pressure from intelligence services not to pursue murder charges that might expose operational details or require testimony from MI6 officers about classified work. The truth? We still don't know. What we do know is that no one was ever charged with Gareth Williams's death. No suspect was ever publicly identified. No arrest was ever made. The case remained open but unsolved, a murder without a murderer, a crime without consequences. For over a decade, investigators, journalists, forensic experts, and amateur detectives have proposed theories to explain what happened to Gareth Williams. Some are grounded in evidence and logic. Others venture into speculation and conspiracy. Let's examine the most credible theories first, the explanations that attempt to account for the physical evidence without invoking intelligence agencies or foreign assassins. Theory 1: Accidental death during sexual experimentation. This was the initial theory promoted by the Metropolitan Police and remains the official position of some investigators despite the coroner's ruling. The scenario: Gareth Williams, exploring sexual interests in bondage or claustrophilia, attraction to confined spaces, climbed into the sports bag as part of solo sexual activity. He managed to zip the bag shut from inside using techniques demonstrated by forensic experts. He secured the padlock through some combination of manipulation and positioning. But once sealed inside, he couldn't escape. Carbon dioxide built up within the bag, leading to hypercapnia and eventual asphyxiation. Evidence supporting this theory. Gareth's internet browsing history shows he visited websites related to bondage and confined spaces, including hogtie and The Art of Constriction. Expensive women's clothing found in his flat suggests possible cross-dressing or exploration of gender identity, indicating private sexual interests he kept hidden. The bag and padlock were purchased by Gareth himself from shops in Chelsea. Security footage confirmed this. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, no obvious third-party involvement. Dr. Nat Carey's testimony demonstrated it was theoretically possible, albeit extremely difficult, to self-secure inside such a bag. Problems with this theory. Over 300 attempts by experts, including contortionists, yoga instructors, and confined space specialists, failed to replicate the feat. Even Dr. Carey's demonstration required multiple attempts under ideal conditions and looked awkward and unnatural. No fingerprints on the padlock, zipper, or bathtub rim, not even Gareth's own. If he sealed himself in, why would his bathroom be wiped clean of prints? The key was inside the bag with him. Most people engaging in self-bondage keep an emergency escape method accessible, not locked away with them where it's useless. DNA from at least 2 unidentified individuals on the lock and zipper. Manufacturing contamination doesn't explain why their DNA is more prominent than Gareth's. The central heating turned to maximum in August, accelerating decomposition. Why would Gareth do this if engaging in sexual experimentation? His mobile phone was reset to factory settings, SIM cards removed and laid out. This suggests deliberate evidence destruction, not accidental death. Family and friends unanimously reject the sexual motive, describing Gareth as private but not engaging in risky sexual behavior. Dr. Fiona Wilcox, after examining all evidence, concluded this theory was most unlikely and found the bondage explanation unfounded. Assessment: while this theory is technically possible in the narrowest sense, it requires accepting multiple improbable elements simultaneously. It also conveniently ignores significant evidence that points toward third-party involvement. Probability: 15%. Theory 2: accidental death with innocent third party present. This theory attempts to bridge the gap between accident and murder by proposing a middle scenario. The scenario: Gareth Williams was engaging in consensual sexual activity, possibly bondage-related, with 1 or 2 other individuals. Something went wrong. Perhaps the activity became too intense, perhaps Gareth had an unexpected medical reaction, perhaps the participants misjudged the danger. When Gareth died, the other people panicked. Instead of calling emergency services and facing scandal, investigation, and career destruction, remember, Gareth was an MI6 officer, any sexual scandal could end his career and potentially compromise operations. They staged the scene to look like solo activity. They wiped down surfaces to remove fingerprints, reset his phone to delete communications between them, turned up the heating to accelerate decomposition, and fled. Evidence supporting this theory explains the unidentified DNA on the lock and zipper. These are the participants who helped seal the bag or touched items during the encounter. Accounts for the lack of Gareth's fingerprints. The scene was wiped by panicked participants trying to remove evidence of their presence. The expensive women's clothing could have been used during consensual role-play or dress-up. The Mediterranean-looking couple, seen at the building in the days before Gareth's death, could be the participants, either arriving for a planned encounter or returning to ensure evidence was properly cleaned. Explains why there was no forced entry. Gareth let them in willingly. Accounts for the staged nature of the scene: shower curtain drawn, lights off, heating elevated. These are actions taken by someone trying to delay discovery. Problems with this theory: no evidence of such a relationship exists. Gareth's phone records, emails, and social media show no indication of romantic or sexual partners during this period. His internet activity was monitored by MI6 as part of security protocols. Any communications with potential sexual partners would have been logged and discovered during the investigation. The Central St. Martin's fashion courses Gareth attended were legitimate educational pursuits, well documented and involving legitimate coursework. Friends and family insist Gareth wanted a conventional relationship and was actively looking for a girlfriend, not engaging in secret sexual encounters. The participants would have to have been extraordinarily careful and lucky to leave so little trace evidence. Even wiping down surfaces usually leaves cleaning chemical residues or disturbs dust patterns in ways investigators can detect. Why would participants go through elaborate staging but leave DNA on the lock? If you're cleaning a crime scene, you clean it thoroughly. You don't leave genetic material on the most obvious piece of evidence. The timeline is tight. Gareth was last seen on CCTV on August 15. He was found on August 23. At some point in those 8 days, participants would have had to realize he was dead, make the decision to flee and cover up, execute the cleanup, and disappear without anyone noticing their comings and goings from the building. Assessment: this theory is more plausible than solo sexual misadventure because it explains the third-party DNA and the staged scene. But it still requires accepting that Gareth was leading a secret sexual life that left absolutely no digital footprint, unlikely for someone living in 2010 when online communication was ubiquitous. Probability: 25%. Theory 3: suicide staged to look like accident. Some have suggested Gareth Williams took his own life but staged it to look like an accident to spare his family the stigma of suicide. The scenario: Gareth was deeply unhappy with his life in London, trapped in an MI6 culture he hated, unable to reconcile his private interests, whether sexual, gender-related, or simply introverted preferences, with the demands of his job. He decided to end his life but didn't want his family to suffer the additional trauma of knowing he chose death. So he staged an elaborate scene that would look like accidental misadventure rather than suicide, allowing his family to grieve without guilt. Evidence supporting this theory: Gareth was known to be unhappy with MI6 culture and wanted to return to Cheltenham. The elaborate staging of the scene suggests someone with intelligence training, someone who knew how to manipulate evidence and create plausible alternative narratives. Gareth's mathematical mind would be capable of planning a complex sequence of actions designed to produce a specific investigative outcome. The purchase of the bag and lock by Gareth himself establishes he had the means and opportunity to stage his own death. Problems with this theory: absolutely no evidence of suicidal ideation. No suicide note, no messages suggesting despair, no changes in behavior that concerned friends or family. Gareth had concrete plans for the future, returning to GCHQ, continuing his fashion studies, visiting family in Wales. These are not the actions of someone planning suicide. The physical evidence makes this impossible. You cannot lock yourself inside a bag from the outside. Even if Gareth wanted to stage an elaborate suicide, he couldn't execute it without violating the laws of physics. Why reset his phone to factory settings? If staging an accident, you'd want the phone to contain evidence supporting the accidental narrative, searches for bondage techniques, communications about sexual interests, etc. Wiping the phone removes this supporting evidence. The 7-day delay in discovery doesn't fit. If Gareth planned his death, he would likely have timed it to ensure a relatively quick discovery, not let his body decompose for a week in August heat. Family and friends unanimously reject the suicide explanation. The coroner found no evidence supporting it. Medical examiners found no indication of suicidal mindset. Assessment: this theory falls apart under scrutiny. Gareth couldn't physically stage his own death in the way it was staged, and there's no psychological evidence suggesting he wanted to die. Probability: 5%. Theory 4: accidental death unrelated to sexual activity. The final, rational, theory proposes that Gareth's death was accidental but had nothing to do with sex. The scenario: Gareth was practicing escape techniques as part of his intelligence training. MI6 officers learn surveillance detection, which includes methods for escaping from restraints in case of capture by hostile forces. Gareth climbed into the bag as a training exercise, testing his ability to remain calm in confined spaces and potentially practicing escape techniques. But something went wrong, he couldn't get out, panicked, and died of asphyxiation. Evidence supporting this theory: Gareth's browsing of bondage and escape artist websites could reflect professional interest rather than sexual interest. Intelligence officers do undergo training in escape techniques, surveillance detection, and operating under stress. Gareth was known to be conscientious and detail-oriented, the type who might practice skills on his own time to improve his professional capabilities. This theory explains the bag and lock without requiring sexual motivation, making it more consistent with family descriptions of Gareth's character. Problems with this theory: why practice in a bathtub with a shower curtain drawn and lights off? Training exercises are done in well-lit, controlled environments where safety measures are in place. Why turn the heating to maximum? This detail makes no sense in an accident scenario. The wiped phone and missing fingerprints suggest deliberate evidence destruction, not accident. Gareth was due to leave MI6 in September. Why would he be practicing escape techniques if he was transferring back to GCHQ, which doesn't require the same operational training? The unidentified DNA on the lock remains unexplained in this scenario. Assessment: while creative, this theory doesn't account for the staging elements of the crime scene. It's essentially the accidental death theory stripped of sexual elements, but it still fails to explain the physical impossibility of self-locking and the evidence suggesting third-party involvement. Probability: 10%. Summary of rational theories. The fundamental problem with all rational explanations is the physical evidence. Even if we grant every benefit of the doubt, even if we accept the most generous interpretations of ambiguous evidence, we cannot escape these facts. 1. It is physically nearly impossible to lock oneself inside that bag in that manner. 2. The scene shows signs of staging and evidence destruction. 3. Unidentified DNA is present on key items. 4. The victim's own fingerprints are mysteriously absent from surfaces he should have touched. 5. The 7-day delay in reporting him missing is highly suspicious. The coroner reached the only logical conclusion: on the balance of probabilities, Gareth Williams was killed unlawfully. Which means we must consider theories that involve murder, and those theories inevitably lead us into darker, more complex territory involving intelligence operations and foreign adversaries. If Gareth Williams was murdered, and the coroner's ruling says he was, then we must ask, why? Who benefits from his death? What was he working on that made him a target? And who has the capability to execute a murder this sophisticated, leaving so little evidence behind? The answers lead us into the shadowy world of intelligence operations, Russian organized crime, and the possibility that Gareth Williams knew something that cost him his life. Theory 5. Russian intelligence assassination. This is the theory that Gareth's family believes most likely, and it's the one that fits most comfortably with what we know about his work and the geopolitical context of 2010. The scenario: Gareth Williams was working with the NSA and FBI on operations targeting Russian organized crime and money laundering networks. These aren't ordinary criminals, they're sophisticated networks with deep ties to Russian intelligence services, oligarchs, and the Kremlin itself. In the world of Russian power, there is no clear line between mafia, business, and state intelligence. They operate as a blended network where money laundering supports political operations, and state resources protect criminal enterprises. Gareth, with his extraordinary mathematical and cryptographic skills, was helping trace illicit financial flows. He was identifying how dirty money moved from Moscow through shell companies in Cyprus, Latvia, and London, eventually being laundered through legitimate investments and real estate. This work directly threatened powerful interests, people who have billions of dollars at stake and access to intelligence services that excel at eliminating threats. In late July 2010, Gareth traveled to Las Vegas for Black Hat and DEF CON, conferences attended by thousands of cybersecurity professionals, hackers, and yes, intelligence operatives from multiple countries. It would be naive to think Russian SVR or FSB weren't present, watching, identifying targets. Gareth extended his stay for a week, spending $2,000 per day, unusual for him. Was he conducting surveillance? Meeting with informants? Or was he being surveilled himself, his movements tracked, his vulnerabilities assessed? When Gareth returned to London on August 11, he had 5 days before he disappeared. That's plenty of time for a team to plan and execute an operation, especially if they had already identified him as a target in Las Vegas. The hit itself follows patterns seen in Russian intelligence operations: sophisticated, leaves minimal forensic evidence, and creates enough ambiguity that authorities can't definitively prove murder. The goal isn't just to kill the target, it's to send a message to others in the intelligence community while maintaining plausible deniability. Evidence supporting this theory. Operational motive: Gareth was actively working on operations that threatened Russian criminal and intelligence interests. His death directly benefited those networks by removing a skilled analyst from the investigation. The timing: his death occurred shortly after returning from Las Vegas, where he would have been accessible for surveillance by foreign intelligence services. The sophistication: the crime scene shows hallmarks of professional execution, minimal forensic evidence, clever staging to create alternative narratives, evidence destruction that suggests intelligence training. Historical precedent: Russia has a documented history of assassinating individuals in the UK. Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned with polonium-210 in London in 2006, 4 years before Williams's death. Sergei Skripal was poisoned with Novichok in Salisbury in 2018. Both were intelligence-related killings on British soil. The unidentified DNA, 2 individuals' genetic material on the lock and zipper could be operatives who executed the hit. Russian intelligence often uses small teams for assassinations, typically 2 to 3 people working in coordinated fashion. The staged scene: the bizarre nature of the crime scene, body in a bag, locked from outside, sexual element suggested by media, creates confusion and delays proper investigation. This is textbook intelligence tradecraft. Create multiple plausible narratives so investigators waste time and resources chasing false leads. MI6 behavior, the 7-day delay in reporting Gareth missing, the private meeting between Sir John Sars and Sir Paul Stevenson, the withholding of 9 memory sticks from investigators, all suggest MI6 knew or suspected state-level involvement and were trying to manage the situation to avoid diplomatic incident or exposure of ongoing operations. The Mediterranean-looking couple, witnesses reported seeing 2 people at the building in the days before Gareth's death. Russian intelligence operatives often use individuals with appearance that blends into European environments, Southern European, Middle Eastern, or Central Asian features that don't immediately scream Russian. Defector testimony. Boris Karpachkov, a former KGB agent who defected to the UK, has publicly stated that Gareth Williams was assassinated by Russian intelligence. Karpachkov claims Williams was killed because he threatened to expose a Russian mole inside GCHQ. While defector testimony must always be treated with skepticism, defectors have incentives to exaggerate their knowledge. Karpachkov's claims align with other evidence. Problems with this theory. No direct evidence. Despite strong circumstantial indicators, there is no smoking gun proving Russian involvement. No intercepted communications, no identified operatives, no forensic evidence specifically linking the crime to Russian intelligence. Risk-benefit calculation. Assassinating an intelligence officer on British soil is extraordinarily risky. It invites massive retaliation, expulsion of diplomats, sanctions, exposure of Russian intelligence networks in the UK. Would Russian intelligence really take that risk to eliminate one analyst, even a skilled one? The sexual staging. If Russian intelligence wanted to kill Williams and send a message, why stage it to look like sexual misadventure? Traditional Russian hits are more direct: poison, shooting, staged accident. The elaborate bag scenario seems unnecessarily complicated if the goal is assassination. British government response. If UK intelligence believed Russia assassinated one of their officers, the response would be severe and public. The fact that no such response occurred suggests either they don't believe Russian involvement or they're covering it up to avoid escalation. Counter-arguments to problems. The risk-benefit argument assumes rational actors, but intelligence operations don't always follow textbook logic. If Gareth Williams had indeed uncovered a high-level mole or was close to exposing major money laundering channels, the damage from letting him live might outweigh the risks of assassination. The sexual staging actually makes strategic sense. By creating the impression of solo sexual misadventure, Russian intelligence ensures that media and public attention focus on the victim's alleged sexual behavior rather than his professional work. Its character assassination combined with physical assassination destroy the credibility of the victim, so even if murder is suspected, no one takes the intelligence connection seriously. The British government's muted response could reflect the difficulty of proving Russian involvement and the desire to avoid escalation during a period when UK-Russia relations were already strained. Assessment. This theory fits the evidence better than any accident scenario. It explains the sophistication of the crime, the motive, the timing, and the strange behavior of MI6. While we cannot prove Russian involvement beyond reasonable doubt, the balance of probabilities strongly suggests state-level intelligence involvement. Probability, 45%. Theory 6, British intelligence cover-up. This is the darkest theory, the one that suggests Gareth Williams was killed not by foreign adversaries but by his own side, or that his death resulted from British intelligence operations and was subsequently covered up. The scenario: Gareth Williams discovered something within GCHQ or MI6 itself, evidence of corruption, unauthorized operations, collaboration with criminal elements, or perhaps a mole working for foreign intelligence. He threatened to expose this information, either to internal investigators or external authorities. Rather than allow this exposure, elements within British intelligence eliminated him and staged the scene to look like sexual misadventure, counting on media and public willingness to accept the narrative that a young gay man died in a bondage accident. Evidence supporting this theory. MI6 suspicious behavior. The 7-day delay in reporting Gareth missing isn't just negligence, it's time to clean up evidence, remove sensitive materials, and coordinate the narrative. The private meeting between the head of MI6 and the police commissioner hours after the body was discovered suggests coordination at the highest levels. The 9 memory sticks, these devices, found in Garrett's office and withheld from investigators until after the inquest began, could contain evidence of what Garrett discovered. The fact that MI6 kept them secret suggests they contain information that would complicate the official narrative. The wiped phone. Intelligence services have the technical capability to remotely wipe phones. If British intelligence wanted to erase communications that revealed what Gareth knew, they could do so. Access to the flat. MI6 controlled the building where Gareth lived. They had keys. They could enter without forced entry. They knew his schedule, his habits, his vulnerabilities. The sophistication of the cover-up, the staged scene, the lack of forensic evidence, the carefully constructed alternative narratives, all of this suggests intelligence tradecraft. British intelligence would have the capability to execute such an operation. The police reluctance. The Metropolitan Police's refusal to investigate as murder despite the coroner's ruling could reflect pressure from intelligence services invoking national security concerns. Gareth's unhappiness. Multiple sources confirm Gareth wanted to leave MI6. What if his desire to return to GCHQ wasn't just about disliking London's rat race, but about distancing himself from something he discovered within MI6? Historical precedent. Britain has a documented history of protecting its intelligence services even when wrongdoing is suspected. The Official Secrets Act provides legal cover for hiding information under national security justifications. Problems with this theory. Extreme risk. Murdering your own intelligence officer is the kind of scandal that could destroy an agency's credibility and trigger parliamentary investigations. The risk-reward calculation doesn't make sense unless what Gareth discovered was catastrophically damaging. Too many conspirators. This theory requires multiple people within MI6 to be complicit, those who executed the killing, those who delayed reporting him missing, those who coordinated with police, those who withheld evidence. Conspiracies involving many people rarely remain secret. Lack of whistleblowers. In the 14 years since Gareth's death, no one from MI6 has come forward with information suggesting internal involvement. Even anonymous leaks haven't surfaced suggesting British intelligence killed one of their own. Gareth's access level. While skilled, Gareth was not a senior officer. He was a technical specialist on secondment from GCHQ. What could he realistically have discovered that would warrant assassination by his own service? The family's belief. Gareth's family believes Russian involvement is most likely. If they had any indication that British intelligence was responsible, they would be screaming it from rooftops and demanding investigations. Assessment. This theory appeals to those skeptical of government power and institutional accountability. And MI6 behavior certainly raises questions. But the extreme risk involved and the lack of any concrete evidence pointing to British involvement makes this less likely than Russian assassination. Probability, 20%. Theory 7. Criminal network retaliation. A variation on the Russian intelligence theory suggests that Gareth was killed not by state actors but by the organized crime networks he was investigating, acting independently of intelligence services. The scenario. Gareth's work on money laundering had identified specific individuals, shell companies, or financial channels that criminal networks were using. These networks, while having ties to Russian intelligence, operate with some autonomy and have their own enforcement capabilities. When they realized Gareth was a threat, they hired professional criminals, not intelligence operatives, to eliminate him. Evidence supporting this theory. Motive. Organized crime networks have direct financial incentive to eliminate analysts threatening their operations, potentially billions in laundered money at stake. Capability. High-level criminal organizations have access to sophisticated killers, including former military and intelligence personnel who work as contract assassins. The couple. The Mediterranean-looking individuals seen at Gareth's building could be contract killers rather than intelligence operatives. Distinction matters for investigating possible suspects. Less state involvement needed. This theory doesn't require believing that Russian state intelligence took the enormous risk of assassinating a British intelligence officer on UK soil. Problems with this theory. The sophistication, the staging, the evidence destruction, the apparent coordination with MI6 response. All suggest intelligence-level operation rather than criminal hit. The timing and access. How would criminals know Gareth's address, his schedule, his vulnerabilities? This information would be protected by MI6 operational security. Criminal networks would need intelligence service penetration to access it. No criminal fingerprints. Organized crime hits usually leave more evidence: witnesses who saw something, communications that can be traced, payments to assassins. The complete absence of such evidence suggests state-level resources and protection. Assessment. This is essentially the Russian assassination theory with criminals as middlemen. It's possible that Russian intelligence used criminal assets to create distance and deniability. But the sophistication suggests direct intelligence involvement rather than mere criminal contractors. Probability, 15%. Theory 8, the third-party witness. One final theory deserves mention, that Gareth's death was indeed accidental or non-criminal, but a third party, someone who discovered the body before police, removed evidence for reasons unrelated to the death itself. The scenario: Gareth dies of natural causes, medical emergency, or even a bizarre accident unrelated to the bag. Someone, a friend, a lover, a colleague, discovers his body. They panic because Gareth's flat contains something that would create scandal if discovered: classified documents he shouldn't have removed from the office, illegal substances, evidence of an affair, communications that would compromise someone else. This person stages the bag scenario to draw attention away from whatever they're removing from the flat. Evidence supporting this theory explains the staging. The bizarre crime scene is designed to confuse investigators and direct attention toward sexual misadventure rather than other possibilities. Explains the DNA. The unidentified genetic material belongs to the person who staged the scene, not killers. Explains MI6 behavior. If classified materials were removed from the flat, MI6 would want to suppress investigation to avoid revealing their loss. Problems with this theory: still doesn't explain the death. Even if someone staged the bag scene after the fact, we still have no explanation for why Gareth died. Extraordinary risk. Staging a false crime scene is a serious felony. Would someone really take that risk just to remove potentially embarrassing materials? The timeline doesn't work. Gareth was missing for 7 days. Decomposition was well advanced. If someone discovered him early enough to stage the scene, they would have called authorities immediately rather than let him decompose. Assessment. This theory attempts to reconcile impossible physical evidence with absence of clear murder motive, but it creates more questions than it answers. Probability, 5%. The intelligence theory conclusion. After examining all scenarios involving intelligence operations, Russian assassination remains the most probable explanation for Gareth Williams's death. It explains motive: he was threatening powerful financial interests with his investigative work. Means: state intelligence services have the capability to execute sophisticated assassinations. Opportunity: his travels to Las Vegas provided surveillance opportunities, his predictable schedule in London created vulnerability. The evidence: the sophisticated staging, the unidentified DNA, the delayed discovery, MI6 suspicious behavior, all consistent with state-level assassination and subsequent cover-up. The British intelligence cover-up theory remains possible but less likely given the extreme risks involved and lack of concrete evidence. The criminal network theory is essentially a variant of Russian assassination using different actors. What we're left with is a situation where the most likely explanation involves a foreign intelligence service assassinating a British intelligence officer on UK soil, and the British government choosing not to publicly pursue it due to diplomatic, operational, or political considerations. It's been over 14 years since Gareth Williams's body was discovered in that red sports bag. In that time, forensic science has advanced dramatically. DNA analysis has become more sensitive. Digital forensics can recover data that seemed permanently deleted. Cold case review units have solved decades-old murders using techniques unavailable in 2010. So what has changed in the Gareth Williams case? What new evidence or analysis has emerged? And why does this case remain stubbornly unsolved? In 2013, 3 years after Gareth's death, the Metropolitan Police conducted a comprehensive review of the investigation. Detective Chief Superintendent Hamish Campbell oversaw this review, bringing fresh eyes to evidence and testimony. The review's conclusion shocked many observers. Police formally announced they believed Gareth Williams's death was probably an accident and that he likely died alone. This directly contradicted the coroner's finding of unlawful killing. Campbell's team argued that the lack of forensic evidence pointing to a third party, combined with Gareth's internet browsing history and the women's clothing in his flat, suggested a tragic accident during solo sexual experimentation. The review acknowledged that experts couldn't replicate getting into and locking the bag from inside, but suggested this didn't prove impossibility, merely that it was extremely difficult and perhaps Gareth succeeded where others failed. The Williams family's response was swift and angry. Their solicitor, Robin Williams, said, "The family of Gareth Williams are very disappointed that the Metropolitan Police should seek to reopen the wounds of this painful and frustrating case. This is particularly so since Mr. Campbell states that he has no new evidence to offer." Dr. Fiona Wilcox, the coroner, also reacted critically. "I am not at all satisfied that the Metropolitan Police review is fair or balanced. The police have chosen to ignore the overwhelming evidence that shows that Gareth Williams's death was criminally mediated. Why would police, in 2013, choose to revert to the accident theory that the 2012 inquest had explicitly rejected?" Several possibilities. Possibility 1, genuine belief. Perhaps investigators truly believed the evidence supported accident over murder, and the inquest got it wrong. Possibility 2, pressure from intelligence services. MI6 and GCHQ might have preferred the accident narrative because murder would require uncomfortable questions about operational security, Gareth's work on Russian money laundering, and potential moles or leaks within intelligence agencies. Possibility 3, diplomatic considerations. If British intelligence believed or knew that Russian services were responsible, publicly investigating as murder could require diplomatic response, expulsion of intelligence officers, potential escalation with Moscow. The accident narrative provided an exit ramp from geopolitical confrontation. Possibility 4, unsolvable case pragmatism. Without clear suspects, witnesses, or smoking gun evidence, murder investigation would consume resources indefinitely with low probability of prosecution. Reclassifying as accident allows the case to be effectively closed while maintaining appearance of thoroughness. In 2019, 9 years after Gareth's death, Metropolitan Police conducted DNA retesting using more advanced genetic analysis techniques. The unidentified DNA samples from the padlock and zipper were reanalyzed with more sensitive equipment capable of producing profiles from degraded or minimal samples. The results? Still inconclusive. The DNA confirmed at least 2 individuals, still unidentified, but the samples remained too degraded to produce full profiles capable of running through criminal databases or genealogical matching services. This represents one of the frustrations of the case. In an era where genetic genealogy has solved countless cold cases, identifying killers decades after their crimes through DNA matches to distant relatives in ancestry databases, the Williams case remains stuck. The DNA is there, proving third-party involvement, but it's not sufficient quality to identify those individuals. In 2021, following the publication of several books and documentaries about the case, there were calls for a new inquest or police review. The Williams family continued to push for recognition that Gareth was murdered and for investigation to focus on Russian intelligence involvement. These calls went nowhere. The case remains officially unexplained, neither murder nor accident in police classification, effectively in limbo. The unanswered questions. Even after 14 years of investigation, review, and analysis, fundamental questions remain. 1. Who were the Mediterranean-looking couple seen at the building? Multiple witnesses reported seeing them. They knocked on several doors before finding Gareth's flat, suggesting they knew the building but not the exact apartment. Were they Russian intelligence operatives? Contract killers? Friends or acquaintances of Gareth? Innocent visitors looking for someone else entirely? We don't know. Despite appeals for them to come forward, despite investigation of visitor logs and CCTV, they were never identified. 2. What happened during Gareth's extended stay in Las Vegas? He attended Black Hat and DEF CON in his official capacity, but then stayed an extra week, spending approximately $2,000 per day, far more than his usual frugal spending. The FBI investigated his movements during this period, interviewing hotel staff and reviewing security footage. Their findings have never been made public. Was he conducting surveillance? Meeting informants? Being surveilled himself by Russian intelligence who attended the same conferences? Or was it simply a vacation where he finally let himself spend money on luxury? 3. What information was on the 9 memory sticks found in his office? MI6 Counter-Terrorism Command withheld these devices from the senior investigating officer until after the inquest began. When finally disclosed, their contents were heavily redacted for national security reasons. What was on them that required such secrecy? Evidence of Russian money laundering networks? Communications about potential moles? Operational details that would compromise ongoing intelligence work? Or routine materials that MI6 was protecting out of bureaucratic habit? 4. Why did MI6 wait 7 days to report Gareth missing? This remains perhaps the most damning question. Every explanation offered, miscommunication, confusion about leave status, assumption that someone else was handling it, sounds like excuse-making rather than legitimate explanation. Intelligence agencies have strict protocols for when officers go dark. Gareth Williams was working on sensitive operations. His failure to return to work should have triggered immediate welfare checks and security assessments. The 7-day delay allowed crucial forensic evidence to be destroyed by decomposition and gave potential killers time to leave the country. Was this genuine bureaucratic failure? Or deliberate delay to allow time for evidence cleanup and coordination of the cover story? 5. Whose DNA is on the padlock and zipper? 2 individuals, unidentified, left genetic material on the most crucial pieces of physical evidence. Manufacturing contamination doesn't explain why their DNA is more prominent than Gareth's own. Casual handling during retail display doesn't explain the specific locations where DNA was found. Who are these people? Why has advanced DNA analysis failed to identify them? And why hasn't genealogical DNA matching, the technique that has solved numerous cold cases, been attempted or succeeded in this case? 6. Why was the heating turned to maximum in August? This detail is often overlooked but is deeply suspicious. Gareth's flat was centrally heated, and the thermostat was set to maximum temperature despite it being August in London, already warm. The elevated temperature dramatically accelerated decomposition, making it impossible for pathologists to determine precise cause of death or identify certain toxins that metabolize quickly. If Gareth was engaging in sexual experimentation gone wrong, why would he turn up the heating first? If someone murdered him, turning up the heating makes perfect sense. It destroys evidence and creates ambiguity about time and cause of death. 7. Why was his phone reset to factory settings? Gareth's mobile phone was found with all data wiped, restored to factory settings. The SIM cards from his multiple phones were removed and laid out on a table. This is not something that happens accidentally. Someone deliberately erased the phone's contents. Was it Gareth himself, deleting evidence of sexual contacts or communications he wanted to keep private? Or was it someone else, removing evidence of communications that would reveal motive or identity of killers? Modern forensic techniques can sometimes recover data from wiped phones, but apparently not in this case. The reset was thorough, suggesting either technical sophistication or complete destruction of relevant data. 8. Why did the police reject the coroner's ruling? In British legal system, coroner's inquests carry significant weight. For the Metropolitan Police to publicly reject Dr. Fiona Wilcox's finding of unlawful killing and revert to probable accident is highly unusual. It suggests either genuine disagreement about evidence interpretation, or pressure from above to close the case without pursuing murder investigation. Either way, it creates the bizarre situation where Gareth Williams is officially murdered according to inquest but not according to the police responsible for catching his murderer. The technology that could solve it. Modern forensic technology has advanced dramatically since 2010. Techniques that could potentially break the case open include genetic genealogy. The technique used to identify the Golden State Killer involves uploading DNA profiles to public genealogy databases and identifying distant relatives, then using traditional investigation to narrow down to the suspect. The Williams case DNA could theoretically be analyzed this way, if the samples are sufficient quality and if the individuals have relatives in databases. Advanced digital forensics, modern tools can recover data from devices that appear completely wiped. The phone reset might not be as absolute as it appeared in 2010. With proper resources, forensic experts might extract communications, location data, or browsing history that was thought permanently deleted. CCTV enhancement, video footage from 2010 was relatively low resolution. Modern AI-powered enhancement can extract surprising detail from poor-quality footage. The Mediterranean couple might be identifiable through enhanced analysis of security cameras from surrounding buildings. Toxicology retesting, new toxicology techniques can identify substances that weren't detectable in 2010. If tissue samples were properly preserved, modern testing might reveal drugs or poisons that explain what happened to Gareth before he was placed in the bag. Forensic entomology review, analysis of insect activity on the body can provide precise timeline information. While this was done in 2010, modern techniques and databases might provide more accurate estimates of time of death, helping establish exactly when Gareth died. But none of these techniques have been applied or made public if they have been applied. The case remains in limbo, officially unexplained, unofficially closed, and practically unsolved. The geopolitical context. Understanding Gareth Williams's death requires understanding the geopolitical context of 2010 and the years that followed. Russian intelligence operations in the UK were, and remain, extensive. The 2006 poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko with polonium-210 demonstrated Russia's willingness to conduct assassinations on British soil. The 2018 poisoning of Sergei Skripal with Novichok in Salisbury confirmed that this was an isolated incident but part of ongoing pattern. Between these bookend cases sits Gareth Williams's death, similar modus operandi, sophisticated assassination disguised or ambiguous, similar targets, individuals threatening Russian intelligence interests, similar British government response, public outrage but limited practical consequence. The money laundering networks Gareth was investigating weren't just financial crimes. They were mechanisms for Russian state kleptocracy, oligarchs, and intelligence services to move billions of dollars through Western financial systems, purchasing influence, funding operations, and undermining democratic institutions. By 2010, London had become the money laundering capital of Europe, with massive flows of Russian capital purchasing real estate, businesses, and access to British elites. Gareth Williams's work threatened to expose these networks and potentially identify British enablers, lawyers, accountants, bankers who facilitated the laundering. This creates a scenario where powerful interests, both Russian and British, might prefer the mystery remain unsolved rather than risk the exposure that genuine investigation might bring. Expert opinions. Over the years, various experts have weighed in on the case. Dr. Peter Falding, confined spaces expert, it is impossible for someone to lock themselves in that bag in that position. I've tried hundreds of times. Even Houdini couldn't do it. Dr. Fiona Wilcox, Westminster coroner, the circumstance of Gareth's death are still unknown, but it is most unlikely that this was an accident. I am satisfied that on the balance of probabilities that Gareth was killed unlawfully. Boris Karpachkov, former KGB officer, defector, Gareth Williams was assassinated by Russian intelligence because he threatened to expose a mole inside GCHQ. This is how the SVR operates: make it look ambiguous, create doubt, ensure plausible deniability. Professor Angela Gallup, forensic scientist, the DNA evidence shows clear third-party involvement. The absence of Gareth's own fingerprints on surfaces he should have touched is highly suspicious and suggests deliberate evidence removal. Detective Chief Superintendent Hamish Campbell, Metropolitan Police Review, while the circumstances are unusual, the lack of clear forensic evidence of third-party involvement suggests this was most probably a tragic accident. The divide between experts mirrors the divide in the case itself. Those who look at physical evidence see murder, those who look at absence of identified suspects see accident. And somehow, 14 years later, we're no closer to resolution. In the years since his death, Gareth Williams has been reduced to a mystery: the spy in the bag, the impossible crime scene, the intelligence conspiracy theories. But before he was a case file, before he was tabloid headlines and coroner's rulings, Gareth Wynne Williams was a person. He was a son who called his parents regularly, who visited his childhood home in Anglesey whenever work permitted, who never forgot where he came from despite his extraordinary gifts. He was a brother-in-law who provided subtle and thoughtful conversation, who was present for family gatherings, who cared about the people who cared about him. He was a friend who maintained relationships from childhood through his adult years, who was loyal and trustworthy, who could be counted on. He was a colleague who won awards for his code-breaking work, who was described as world-class by his supervisors, whose mathematical brilliance helped protect British national security and disrupt terrorist operations. He was a passionate cyclist who found peace on Welsh mountain roads, who loved the solitude of hillsides and the rhythm of breath and movement. He was a student of fashion design, exploring creative interests that had nothing to do with intelligence work or mathematics, who wanted to understand how aesthetic beauty is constructed. He was a modest genius who never flaunted his abilities, who treated everyone with respect regardless of their education or status, who embodied the Welsh values of community and humility that shaped his upbringing. Born September 26, 1978, in Valley, Anglesey, Gareth lived just 31 years, 10 months, and 20 days. In that brief time, he accomplished what most people couldn't achieve in twice the lifespan. First-class degree at 17. PhD by his early 20s. GCHQ codebreaker. MI6 intelligence officer. His mind operated at a level that dazzled even his brilliant colleagues. But the achievements, impressive as they are, don't capture who Gareth was. His family doesn't remember him primarily as a genius mathematician or elite spy. They remember him as the boy who spoke Welsh first, who loved the landscape of his birth, who wanted a girlfriend and family, who was looking forward to leaving London and returning to the countryside that grounded him. The tragedy of Gareth Williams isn't just that he died young, though that's tragic enough. It's that his death has been twisted by media speculation, used for intelligence cover-ups, reduced to salacious headlines about bondage and cross-dressing. His character has been assaulted as thoroughly as his body was. Dr. Fiona Wilcox recognized this at the inquest, condemning the media manipulation that portrayed Gareth as a sexual deviant rather than what he actually was, a private, thoughtful man with legitimate interest in fashion design, who was targeted either by foreign intelligence or caught in circumstances beyond his control. His childhood sweetheart, Sion Lloyd-Jones, defended him publicly, rejecting the insinuations and insisting that Gareth wanted conventional relationships and a normal life. Her testimony at the inquest painted a picture of a man who was shy but not isolated, private but not strange, intelligent but not cold. His family has maintained dignity throughout the ordeal. Ian and Ellen Williams, his parents, have endured seeing their son's life dissected, his privacy violated, his death unsolved. They have consistently maintained that Gareth was murdered, likely by Russian intelligence, and that British authorities have failed to provide justice. Carrie, his sister, has been the family's voice in public statements, pushing for continued investigation, rejecting the accident narrative, demanding that her brother's death be treated with the seriousness it deserves. On August 23 every year, the anniversary of his body's discovery, the Williams family takes time to remember Gareth not as a case file but as their son, their brother, their family member whose loss left a hole that will never be filled. The impact of Gareth's death extends beyond his immediate family. It has affected how British intelligence agencies handle welfare checks for their officers. It has raised questions about accountability when intelligence work intersects with criminal investigation. It has become a cautionary tale about the vulnerabilities of even the most skilled operatives when facing sophisticated adversaries. The city of Cheltenham, where Gareth worked for GCHQ for nearly a decade, remembers him as a colleague who embodied the best of what signals intelligence can be: brilliant, ethical, dedicated to protecting others even when the work remains invisible. The mathematics and computer science departments at the universities where Gareth studied remember him as a student who pushed boundaries, who asked questions no one else thought to ask, who demonstrated that genius combined with humility is possible. Anglesey, the small Welsh island where Gareth grew up, remembers him as one of their own who went on to do extraordinary things but never forgot his roots. The landscape he loved, the language he spoke first, the community that shaped him, all remain, but Gareth is gone. What would Gareth Williams be doing today if he had lived? He would be 46 years old. He would have completed his fashion studies at Central St. Martin's. Perhaps he would have returned to GCHQ as he planned, continuing his work in cryptography and signals intelligence. Perhaps he would have found the girlfriend and family he wanted. Perhaps he would be cycling through Welsh hills, finding peace in the solitude he valued. Instead, he is frozen at 31, forever the young mathematician found in an impossible situation, subject of conspiracy theories and tabloid speculation, denied justice because the truth remains locked away, just like he was locked in that bag, by forces more powerful than any individual. The inscription on his gravestone in Wales reads simply, Gareth Wyn Williams 1978–2010 Cariad a Hiraeth. Love and longing, traditional Welsh words that capture the feeling of missing someone who cannot return. His family, his friends, his colleagues, they carry that hiraeth, that deep longing for someone who was taken too soon, in circumstances that remain deliberately obscure. Gareth Williams was not perfect. No one is. But he was good. He was kind. He was brilliant. He deserved better than to die alone, if he died alone, in a bathroom in Pimlico. He deserved better than to have his death turned into fodder for tabloid speculation. He deserved better than to have his character questioned and his privacy violated. Most of all, he deserved justice. He deserved a thorough investigation uncompromised by political considerations or intelligence service cover-ups. He deserved to have his killers, if there were killers, identified, prosecuted, and held accountable. 14 years later, he still hasn't received that justice. But his family hasn't given up. The coroner's ruling of unlawful killing stands. The questions remain unanswered. And somewhere, perhaps in Moscow, perhaps in London, perhaps in a place we haven't even considered, someone knows what really happened in that flat on Alderney Street in August 2010. Someone knows who visited Gareth that night. Someone knows whose hands sealed that zipper and clicked that padlock. Someone knows why a brilliant young mathematician had to die. And someday, if justice has any meaning, that knowledge will come to light. The truth, like Gareth's body in that sealed bag, cannot remain hidden forever. Eventually, someone will find the key that unlocks this mystery. For now, we remember Gareth Wyn Williams, not as a case file, not as a conspiracy theory, not as a tabloid headline, but as a person whose life mattered, whose death demands answers, and whose memory deserves respect. August 23, 2010. A red sports bag in a bathtub. A padlock clicked shut from the outside. A key trapped inside with a body. And 14 years of questions that have never been adequately answered. The death of Gareth Williams remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in modern British history. The physical evidence seems to prove murder. Experts agree it's nearly impossible to lock oneself in that bag in that manner. The coroner ruled unlawful killing. Third-party DNA was found on crucial evidence. The scene showed signs of sophisticated staging and evidence destruction. Yet no one has been charged. No suspect has been publicly identified. The investigation has been declared complete with the conclusion that it was probably an accident, a finding that contradicts the coroner, the physical evidence, and common sense. So what really happened? Based on all available evidence, the most likely explanation, the one supported by the balance of probabilities, is this. Gareth Williams was assassinated by Russian intelligence operatives or their proxies because his work on money laundering operations threatened powerful financial and political interests connected to the Kremlin. The hit was executed with sophistication designed to create ambiguity and delay proper investigation. British intelligence services, recognizing the geopolitical implications, chose not to aggressively pursue murder investigation, allowing the case to be framed as a bizarre accident rather than state-sponsored assassination that would require diplomatic response. Confidence level, 45%. The alternative explanation, that Gareth died in a tragic solo sexual accident, requires accepting physical impossibilities, ignoring third-party DNA evidence, and believing that multiple suspicious elements, wiped phone, elevated heating, missing fingerprints, 7-day delay in reporting, are all innocent coincidences. Confidence level, 15% the possibility of British intelligence involvement or cover-up of domestic wrongdoing cannot be entirely dismissed, given MI6 suspicious behavior throughout the investigation. Confidence level, 20%. The remaining 20% accounts for scenarios we haven't considered, unknown factors, classified information, or explanations that simply haven't emerged yet. What we know for certain is this: Gareth Williams deserved better. He deserved to live beyond 31. He deserved to pursue his passion for fashion design, to find the relationship he wanted, to return to the Welsh countryside he loved. He deserved a thorough investigation uncompromised by political considerations. And he deserved justice. 14 years later, that justice remains elusive. But justice delayed is not justice denied, not permanently. Cases have been solved decades after they occurred. Witnesses have come forward years later. Technology has unlocked mysteries that seemed impossible. If you have any information about Gareth Williams's death, if you know who the Mediterranean couple were, if you have knowledge of Russian intelligence operations in London in 2010, if you worked in intelligence and know something about what Gareth was investigating, contact the Metropolitan Police Cold Case Unit or submit tips anonymously through Crime Stoppers. Someone out there knows what happened. Someone saw something. Someone heard something. Someone was involved or knows who was involved. That person might be watching this video right now. The truth is locked away, just like Gareth was locked in that bag. But locks can be opened. Secrets can be revealed. And justice, though delayed, can still be delivered. For Gareth Williams. For his family. For the principle that intelligence officers, British, American, or any nationality, deserve protection and justice when they are targeted for doing their jobs. Unsolved. Unforgotten. And locked away in silence. The spy found locked in a bag he couldn't have closed himself. The intelligence services that waited 7 days before checking on him. The DNA from unidentified individuals. The coroner who ruled murder. The police who called it an accident. The family still searching for answers 14 years later. If you found this case as baffling as we did, please leave a like on this video. It helps the YouTube algorithm share these forgotten stories with more people who care about truth and justice. Subscribe to Cold Case Dossier and hit that notification bell so you never miss a case. We investigate history's most baffling unsolved mysteries with thorough research, respectful treatment of victims, and commitment to truth, even when truth is elusive. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. This case happened in London, but it connects to intelligence operations spanning from Wales to Las Vegas to Moscow. These stories transcend borders. What's your theory? Do you believe Gareth Williams was assassinated by Russian intelligence? Do you think British intelligence covered up something? Or do you accept the accident explanation despite its physical impossibility? Comment below with your thoughts. Share this video. Gareth's family has never given up seeking answers. Maybe someone watching knows something. Maybe someone remembers seeing a Mediterranean-looking couple in Pimlico in August 2010. Maybe someone worked in intelligence and has information they've kept silent for 14 years. Sharing this video keeps the case alive and increases the chance that someone with crucial information will finally come forward. Our next case takes us back to Cold War Berlin, where an American soldier disappeared from a secure military base, only to be found weeks later in circumstances that suggest either the most elaborate defection in espionage history or murder covered up by both superpowers. Subscribe so you don't miss The Soldier Who Vanished, the Cold War Mystery of Thomas Reed. Remember, these cases aren't entertainment. They're real lives cut short, real families still grieving, real mysteries that deserve resolution. Every view, every share, every comment keeps pressure on authorities to deliver justice. For Gareth Williams. For his family. For the truth. This is Cold Case Dossier. Stay curious. Stay skeptical. And never forget.